Okay, this is Nick Bernardo, and it is December 16th, 2015, and this is the next in our series for the Fall Virtual Trade Fair Series by Federal. And on the line with us, we have Leah Wilson-Conger, who is co-operator of the Federal Network, along with Corey Gabler, an entrepreneur in the collection industry, who has recently formed a company called Steel River Systems, LLC. How are you guys doing today?
Good. How are you, Nick? Thanks for having me. Hi, Leah.
Hello. Hi, Corey. Very good.
So, Corey, before we get started, just to sort of set the stage for anyone who may be listening, the Department of Education put out the new bid last Friday, the 11th, and for the first time in recent memory, they're asking bidders to name subcontractors. Federal already has disabled veteran-owned companies. However, we know that your involvement and your ownership of a service-disabled veteran-owned company would be very enticing to some PCAs because of your background. The PCAs will have to name subs in their bid, and there are very few service-disabled veteran-owned companies. And we are pleased that you've joined our network because we know you have the ability, the capital, and the wherewithal to do this. So without further ado, what I'll do is I'll turn it over to you, and you can tell us a little bit about your company.
All right, great. Are we going to bring a slide? Should I go through the cover deck now, or just a little background for you? Perfect. See it popping up right now. All right, fantastic. Well, thank you everybody for listening and attending, even if this is after the fact. Appreciate you taking the time to look at us and, of course, potentially give consideration here. So as Nick said, I'm Corey Gabler. I founded and am the managing member of Steel River Systems, LLC. Formed this company very recently. And of course, there's always questions with a startup, so hopefully I answer some of those in this conversation for you today. Some background on me. I've been working specifically in the PCA market for about the last 5 years now, and in that time I've had really the fantastic opportunity to work with almost all, I think about 20 of the 22 PCAs on the previous contract, and it's been a really great experience for me. My specific avenue when it comes to working with those PCAs has been in very much the skip tracing world, and then a lot on administrative resolutions as well. So kind of boiled into the foundation of this company is some ingrained experience there. And the company I come from, of course, Verifax, many of you might be familiar with, has been a trusted partner to a lot of these PCAs. So there's a lot of experience that's boiled into this company when it comes to skip tracing and, of course, a custom product line that I basically helped redevelop around administrative resolutions. So when it comes to finding, of course, difficult to find consumers or processing incarceration or deceased borrowers as well, definitely a fair amount of experience there. In the formation of this company, it was kind of a culmination of a perfect storm type of effect here. I looked at this industry and saw this kind of opportunity sitting there, and then when this latest bid cancellation and revisement came out, it really came together and said, well, they're requiring you guys to name specifically and adhere to these subcontracting requirements. Not a lot of applicable companies are out there, and particularly who might have experience in this industry. So with that, I've been fortunate enough to have people come to me who have talent in the industry as well to help put together a very sound management team, and there's been a lot of interest there. So I'm very excited about that particular item. A couple of administrative tasks here as we look through the slide deck. Very used to dealing with definitely these very stringent security items when it comes to FSMA per NIST standards, PCI DSS 2.0, or now the most recent edition of 3.0, SSA 16, SOC 1, SOC 2. Had experience in really the ground up working on those items. So I have a very good understanding, and the company's kind of built with these core security principles in mind. You know, you have to have things like segregated business units and passcard authentication in order to get from one zone to the other, and even to get in the building, and cameras and motion detectors. So that's very well understood in this company. Additionally, probably one of the biggest concerns for a lot of people when you're considering a startup company like myself, and we'll just call it what it is, it's a startup, is access to capital and financing. Like I said, there was this kind of this perfect culmination of events in the industry when it comes to capital and financing, and in a company like this that has, and we'll go over a little bit later, things like SDVOSB and resides in a hub zone. There's some very specific advantages to being that type of a company. We're eligible for different types of grants that a lot of companies aren't. But as a business plan, you never want to bank on grants as your primary source of startup capital. So we use that as kind of a side benefit, and we're happy if we get them. But really the core initiative there is local incentives, being in a hub zone type community, and knowing a lot of the other business leaders in this area and the local governments. You know, they've come out and they're like, and they give the line of reasoning that, you know, we really need these employment opportunities in our area, being that it's a hub zone, and they're willing to offer things like tax abatements and subsidies for specific hardware items or connectivity or any types of, you know, additional necessary construction expenses. And then you have, you know, your general capital items such as taking on debt, which is a necessity, and capital investment if we want to consider bringing on the right partners who are the right fit. What's always important when you're talking about capital, though, is things like burn rates. It all kind of boils down there to building lean. We have to make sure we have the appropriate security and compliance requirements absolutely covered and solidified. There's no ifs, ands, or buts around that. It has to be done in this industry, and you can't shortchange it. However, you can still accomplish those tasks and build a lean company, and that's what we're confident we're in the process of doing right now. Within a lean build and getting your planning down very well, you have to come to some very specific ramp-up type periods. So when we talk about ramp-up, there's a lot of things we can do in place prior to receiving accounts and prior to expending large amounts of capital to really get up and off the ground and running for you guys and working your business. And, you know, we've calculated basically 150-day ramp-up time as a fairly conservative number to be at about 80% production readiness. And we're very confident in that number. There's a lot of details there, and you're welcome to talk to me more about those items later if you like, and I'll be happy to disclose things with you. Of course, we come to the big ticket items, which are certifications per the SDA. When we're talking things like service-disabled, veteran-owned small business, you can see the SDVOSB item down there, or HUBZone. Those are, of course, the two primary certifications that would be applicable to us. We have full confidence in getting the HUBZone certification. We plan on applying for that here in the first quarter of 2016. Obviously, the company resides within a hub zone, understanding the requirements to be in a hub zone, such as minimum employee standards, and even things down to the minute details of those employees have to be living there for at least 180 days in order for them to qualify for your employee percentages. So we've done our homework on those certifications, and we're very confident that we'll get those the first time around through the SBA. Additionally, SDVOSB is kind of a you are or you aren't, but for purposes of this procurement, you know, the SBA wants you to go through something called the veteran verification process, which is actually more stringent than the HUBZone, but we're also very confident in accomplishing that goal. Unfortunately, that comes with some tighter timelines in those turnarounds. There's another item that I want to talk about called veteran-owned small business, which isn't explicitly, it's only partially explicitly stated in the bid, and it's something we hopefully will get answered by the Department of Education in this first round of questions that I believe is due December 21st. But within FAR .704A subsection 1, there's very specific references to veteran-owned small business as an additional criteria there, and it's also mentioned in 2 places on the subcontracting plan put out by the Department of Education. So we'll be looking into that, but that might be a 3rd certification that you'd be able to knock out within one company, and the current understanding is it looks like that's a 5%er as well. When it comes to government experience, of course, I've been working personally with the PCAs for the last 5 years. I have a fair amount of experience in my background, and there's really a wealth of talent available within the industry right now. And fortunately, we're located in a position that is geographically close to some of the other existing PCAs or recently closed PCA offices, or things that are kind of shared labor markets that we can help pull some experience from. So hopefully I've answered a lot of your questions there up front, but I'm happy to take additional as well. Nick?
I think that's a wonderful introduction to your business, Corey. We see on the slide deck that there's a photo there in uniform. Where was that taken?
That was taken in Afghanistan in 2010, which would have been my last deployment right before I got out of the Marine Corps there.
You could tell us where, but you'd have to kill us, right?
It's something like that. I mean, during the process, I did end up having to get a secret clearance because I was working. I was an infantryman by trade, and I did my first deployment as a regular infantryman, and my last 2 deployments, the 3rd of which was to Afghanistan. I was still with an infantryman, but I was also in charge of an intelligence cell. On my second deployment, it was an 8-man intelligence cell. And on my last one to Afghanistan, which was a very specialized deployment that you don't see very often, where we deployed as a small group, I had a 3-man intelligence cell, and we were doing some interesting things there.
Well, and I wasn't sure about this, but I'm just curious about it. Do they let just anyone have those kinds of security clearances, or what kind of a person do they look for to even be in the intelligence community?
Well, they actually came to our infantry unit, and they do this periodically, and they try and source people who might have the requisite skills or aptitude to perform these functions. And so they do a pretty in-depth screening process, and then you have to go to a separate secondary school, and you go through these intelligence courses, and you work with, this is probably terrible to say on the phone, but you work with people like interrogation teams and all those type, and actually people with top secret clearances on working and acquiring all these trade set skills so that you can bring them back to your localized unit and build your own intelligence units kind of at an infantry level and do separate operations there. So we were doing things such as providing unmanned aerial vehicle support. We did a lot of the intelligence analysis work while still going out on patrol and doing all the regular infantry things. You get back from patrol, and then you click over and you do all of your intelligence work, debriefing, go back, commingle and get all those intelligence assets that you gathered on patrol into a centralized, a lot of steps there.
Well, thank you for your service, by the way. And I guess getting back to the PCA initiative, yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about how your past involvement in the PCA initiative as a vendor would help you be an effective sub?
Well, that is certainly the idea. Like I said earlier, I've worked with all the PCAs, but actually, and that's of course conversational, but actual work with the vast majority. I believe the last count was around 20 or so of the PCAs over the years, and I've gotten to see a lot of different slicing and dicing and angles to this default collection student loan contract. And, we've handled hundreds of thousands of defaulted consumer accounts on the skip tracing side, and doing a lot of the same things as an agency does. It's not a traditional environment where you're just running a piece of data, we were doing more than that. We had people actually on the phone doing manual investigations, sometimes talking to the consumers themselves. So there's a lot more similarities there than you would think with a traditional, say, skip vendor to this type of market. And we believe that that's prepared us well to move into this next function of opening SRS.
Well, I just had one additional question, and then perhaps Leah, you could ask a few questions. My last question is, and you mentioned about the capital requirements, but let's just be real here. We know that this is a lot of money. Can you go a little bit further as far as your understanding of the actual capital requirements here?
So actual capital requirements is an interesting conversation. It does take a lot of money to enter this market. There's some high barriers to entry. Capital is definitely one of them, particularly when you're talking about federally mandated minimum wages, the additional health and wellness there. Just in payroll alone, you have a lot of expenses. Generally, as a generalized number, the number that I see used for a startup collection agency in this market is around the $1 million mark in needed upfront capital. Sometimes you see well-prepared companies go under that. Sometimes you see them go over that. We're prepared to be able to raise that amount of money, and we've successfully raised a significant portion thereof already, over half. And we understand that it often takes $1 million, but we really believe that we can do it for less. And there's a couple of key indicators playing into that number. One of them is, of course, building lean, but anybody can say that they want to build lean, and doing it in actuality is very different. But through the local community that we're in and having very good ties with my local government, I have breakfast with the mayor and a lot of the local business leaders very regularly, and we're able to get things like tax abatements and construction cost subsidies and certain critical infrastructure such as fiber run to the building at like an 80% subsidized rate. So there's a lot of very specific items that we've gone out and explored, and we're able to significantly reduce costs on, as well as experience in working with small businesses in similar environments, or starting small businesses in similar environments in the past. There's some experience there in being able to build a business.
Leah, do you have any questions?
I do. I have a couple, and that's great, Corey. This all just is making sense that you would start a collection agency at this point. It seems like the next logical step for your career. So I wonder, how does your military background help you to understand the nuances of how to comply with regulation?
Oh, that's a fun one. Working with the government, if we call a spade here, there's definitely some unique challenges when it comes to working with the government. You guys have been helping people with that for years. Fortunately, you guys are definitely an asset to companies like myself with your wealth of experience in working with government subcontracts. But additionally, not just in my military experience, although I pull from that, also with my experience with Verifax and Compass Performance. I've had to work with contracting items before and registration and certification items before. Those government forms are very complex. I mentioned the specific FAR regulation earlier. Just knowing where those are and how to look them up can be a difficult task in its own. But I'm very much a research-oriented person, and actually, strange as it sounds, enjoy looking these things up. So I feel like we're very well prepared in dealing with government procurements, regulations. I've had to deal personally with on-site client assessments and vendor assessments very in depth over the last 5 years, and having to build out the paperwork and policies and procedures related to passing those requirements, even specifically as it relates to both security requirements for FSMA, NIST, PCI, DSS, etc., or when it comes to compliance requirements and having to deal with FDCPA, FCRA, TCPA, and a lot of the applicable regulations there. Hopefully that answers your question.
Absolutely, very good. I was talking and had you on mute, so I'm sorry, but I do have another. I think we'd like to hear about your labor market.
So the labor market is definitely a big question for companies because ed collections isn't any everyday collections. You know, there's some specific skill sets there. So geographically, we're located in kind of a centralized location here. We're within commuting distance to Chicago. We're in Rock Falls, Illinois, which is Northwestern Illinois, but we're within commuting distance to Chicago. We're within commuting distance to Rockford, DeKalb, and to the west, if anybody's familiar with the Quad Cities, a lot of those places have associated hub zones, have had past PCA offices that are either there currently or have recently closed. So they're, with that specific labor market, you know, we really have a wealth of both collectors and collection experience to pull from, as well as management experience from some of those closed or existing offices and people who are either out of a job or might be looking to go elsewhere.
Very good. Nick, do you have anything else?
No, I would just say that, Corey, we sure do appreciate your time this afternoon. And I guess if you would like to close with any sort of closing statements, anything that you would like the PCA bidder community to know, maybe you could just share that at this time.
Absolutely. I know a lot of the PCAs who are hopefully listening to this have dealt with me in the past. Hopefully you've had very positive experiences in your working relationship with me, you know, and I like to call some of you friends as well. So hopefully I'll be able to, you know, work with you guys just now in a new capacity, and I can bring my past experience to not just fill your subcontracting requirements, but to bring, you know, some real competitive advantage to your company through some of those past experiences. So hopefully you knock out 2 birds with 1 stone there for you guys.
Well, thanks again, Corey and Leah. Folks, have a good day, and we will be in touch.
All right. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Leah.